I am a person who stutters,
Mm-hmm.
but I can speak very, very eloquently, I hope.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge thing about this, is that you start to understand that it just doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And people never really cared about your stutter as much as you thought they did.
On the 39th episode of Passion in Progress, Brian Sellers. Brian is a stutterer, but he's achieved an eloquent way of speaking through something called the McGuire Programme. And in this episode, we dive deep into what that program is and how he himself, as a stutterer, teaches other stutterers how to overcome their stuttering. That's quite the sentence. Brian can relate his stutter and his past experiences to people that don't even stutter and how they approach fear in showing up as their authenticated self. It's truly an inspiring conversation, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. If this whole podcast sounds like something that you would want to share with a friend, well, I would love for you to share that with a friend. You can share it via Facebook, Twitter, text message. You could write it on a letter. If you want to tag me on anything social, I'm at Javier Mercedes X. That's Javier Mercedes X. And I love to retweet, repost, re-storyify on Instagram, anything that people say about the podcast. And I would love to reshare, retweet, repostify your post as well. If you would like to support the podcast, I'm on Patreon. Thank you guys so much to all my patrons so far. I'm at patreon.com/Javier Mercedes. That's Javier Mercedes, just like the car. Wow, I just rhymed that. That's the first time I've ever rhymed that before. And then last but not least, if you guys could write me a review on iTunes if you are consuming this podcast via the iTunes app. That helps the podcast grow and spread into the iTunes algorithm. Without further ado, let's get into a very inspiring 39th episode of Passion in Progress about stuttering with Brian Sellers. What is up, Mercedes? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show, where we talk to inspiring individuals, and hopefully through hearing their stories, you too are motivated to go out and pursue your passions. And today on the show, we have somebody that I've wanted to get on the show for quite some time. He has been on my YouTube channel. He's been here for a smidge inside Austin, Texas, but I caught him just on the little sliver on the way out. Brian Sellers, thank you so much for your time. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much for having me, Javier. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, like you said, I've been here in Austin now since, Tuesday. I just got it in on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. I'm here with the McGuire Programme. I stutter. I've stuttered all my life, and about 4 years ago, I found this program that is truly a stutterers helping stutterers program. And so we aren't speech pathologists or speech therapists, but we are a worldwide organization of stutterers who help each other. And we have a technique that we use that helps us to control our speech and to speak more eloquently. It's kind of a combination of a different kind of breathing technique called costal breathing, and then a number of other physical weapons, we call them, that just help us to control our speech. But then also what's so special about the McGuire Program is that it's the whole psychological aspect of it too.
Yeah.
Because as a person who stutters, it's just, it's tough being a kid. My voice is, I've been talking a lot for the last week. But, it's certainly not a whole lot of fun to stutter. I don't think anybody ever said, "Wow, I can't wait. I'm so happy that I'm doing this today."
Yeah.
But that's where the program itself is so helpful for a lot of people, because all of us are stutterers. All of our coaches, all of our instructors, everybody in the program has been there. And so we have these 3-day courses, and we teach other stutterers how this technique works, and then we provide lifetime support. And that's where I think a lot of the magic of the program happens, because it's not something that you can cure at all, but certainly not in just a 3-day course. And so, like I said, I just found the program about 4 years ago myself. It really, really changed my life. And then I was able to become a coach in the program, an instructor in the program. And then about 2.5 years ago now, I was very honored to be offered the opportunity to take over all of the operations of the program in the United States and Canada. And that's just it's been a whole lot of fun being able to try and grow this thing in my country and in Canada. And it's just inspiring every day. I love what I do. I really, really do. So
there's so many jumping off points and like so many questions. Since we started off with McGuire Programme and everything like that, it started overseas, correct?
It did, yeah. It was created about 25 years ago by a guy named Dave McGuire. He's an American who at the time was playing professional tennis over in Holland. And
as one does.
Well, yes. I mean, usually, but he's been a severe stutterer his whole life, and had tried a number of things that hadn't exactly worked for him. But then he was able to combine three things that are very unique on their own. And I think that that's where his real genius has been, is that he was able to take a new breathing technique that he learned from an opera singer, which is a more upper chest breath instead of how you normally breathe, like belly breathing. So
yeah, for my degree, I actually had to. I went through the School of Music at Ball State, and part of my minor was doing singing. So I know exactly what you're talking about, especially with your diaphragm and everything.
The diaphragm.
Do you want to elaborate?
Sure. I mean, as you said, the diaphragm, right? That is what controls our breathing. It as it expands, or as it contracts, it pulls down, which then creates a larger cavity in our thorax that then creates a vacuum, and the air comes in, and we call that inhalation.
Yeah.
And then as that diaphragm relaxes, then it comes back up, makes that thoracic cavity a bit smaller again, which then pushes air out, and we call that exhalation. Where stutterers often get tripped up is with the smooth movement of that diaphragm. And they aren't sure exactly why or how it starts, but if you don't move your diaphragm smoothly, then you start to get diaphragmatic freezing, basically. And that will then reduce that airflow, which then has your vocal cords, which are expecting to have some nice positive pressure coming across them all the time, and then that stops, and they kind of spasm and they get stuck. It creates problems in your vocal cords then, which then leads to distortion in your articulators too, your lips, tongue, and teeth, and that just kind of compounds, and then you have a block. You stutter. You don't have the words come out, and then you start to feel all the psychological things.
Yeah. Before we get into the next two things,
sure,
because I think you said there was three, and one of them is the breathing technique.
Right.
One of the things I'm curious about, especially in our dialogue right now, from your perspective, if you're saying something, if somebody is trying to like finish the sentence for you while you're stuttering,
right,
is that something that you want people to do or not to do?
It depends on the person. I mean, I generally, I don't usually, but I don't get upset with people if they do. I know a lot of stutterers though, for whom it's like, yeah, thanks. Now I don't have to say it myself, and so it's, I mean, in the McGuire program, that's not how we do things, and it's certainly not what we would expect to have people doing for us, because we have all these tools, all these weapons to be able to control our speech. And even if we do have have those blocks, we have all these things to be able to pull ourselves out of it. So.
Yeah, because in my mind, even when you're talking like now, I'm like, oh, like I don't want to assume what you're gonna say, and then like try and finish what you're saying, and then it's like completely something technical. It's like, oh no, okay, that is not what I thought he was gonna say. But I just want to know, especially for the audience that's listening, if they are talking to somebody that's stuttering, just the whole I guess apartheid or reaction and then actions between a whole conversation and how to treat that.
Right.
So what's the second thing besides the breathing technique?
So he learned this upper chest costal breath, which is a lot stronger breath. It's a lot easier to control because you are using much bigger muscles. That then also hasn't been conditioned to freezing if you have that. If you're under high stress and if you have any kind of stress like that, then we haven't conditioned those upper chest muscles to have those issues, and so we don't have those issues as much. But then the other two things were sports psychology, because as I said, he was doing a whole lot of professional tennis in Holland, and he'd studied a lot of sports psychology, and then he combined those two things with a pretty good knowledge of how speaking happens, and certainly a whole lot of personal knowledge of how stuttering happens. He had studied a lot with a guy named Dr. Sheehan at UCLA back in the 80s, I guess. His genius was to be able to combine all of that into a framework and a program that he was able to help himself. He basically bootstrapped his own help for his stuttering, and then he was able to start helping other people on a small basis, and then he kind of started that a lot over in England, and it's been a much larger program over there for the last 25 years. It has been over here in the States, but we are trying to expand that a lot right now. So
you're on the initial groundswell.
It's been over here. We have the opportunity now to expand it a lot more in the States, and I'm just so excited to be able to help with that.
Yeah, so let's talk about your last, I guess, week in general. The whole concept of public speaking at 368, and then also teaching other stutterers the techniques and everything to overcome their stuttering. And then like you're on a podcast right now, dude, and that like talking is like all of these things talking. And I guarantee your voice probably coming through the microphone is like one of the most pristine, like nicest sounding voices, because you're right up on the mic and it sounds nice and sexy. But let's take it back to what you did at 368. Is that the first time that you've done a public speaking event like that? Do you want to just give context of what Creators Offline is and start from there?
Creators Offline is an organization that has just been started by a guy named Genki Hagata.
Hashtag Creators Offline, no small creator, and just shout out Genki.
That's right. That's right. And it's really cool because we all met at the Vid Summit conference in October in Los Angeles, which was a fantastic conference.
It's been crazy how much of an interweaving.
I know.
Like how much my life has changed from just that one little weekend.
And that's been in like 2-3 months now.
Yeah.
I feel the same way, you know. But so Vid Summit, for those who don't know, is a huge conference. I think they had 1,300 people there, all creators, a whole lot of vloggers, which was actually pretty funny to see all these people just pointing huge cameras at themselves all weekend. I saw a couple people in the hotel who were not there for the conference, and I just said, "Look, I'm sorry. I promise we aren't all narcissists. This is just
pointing
this is what we're doing."
Ourselves.
They were just looking at like, what is going on? So Genki though had the idea to create smaller conferences that are cheap or free that can be done all across the country to have people who can't afford to go to the big conferences or who don't have those resources to be able to have similar experiences. And the cool thing about that is that it also, it certainly gives a lot of opportunity to other people to speak at these more conferences that have smaller numbers of people, but are still big events, important events.
Yeah.
And so in December, when he started this whole thing, and he said, "Yeah, I'm trying to have this happen up at a place called 368, which is owned by the Casey Neistat."
Yeah.
And is his, I guess, incubator, basically. As that became a potential possibility, I reached out to him and said, "Hey, Genki, look, I've been helping people to overcome their fears and to conquer their fears for a while now. I've got a story where it's a very, very personal thing for me, and I know that that it could be applicable to a lot of smaller YouTubers out there, smaller creators of all kinds of media. Just, we all have fears, and it can be easy to allow that fear to kind of paralyze us. But if you take steps and you understand that it's okay to have that fear, but you just have to start moving, choose small steps to build momentum, and then just continue doing that, you can truly, totally overcome anything in your life. And I see that, I mean, literally every single day in the McGuire program, and it's amazing. So I was very, very happy to be given the opportunity to speak at 368. We had about 100 or 120 people up there.
There were more people that wanted to come, but there was only so much limited space.
Right. But for me, it was crazy because I've not done public speaking at an event like that. Certainly not with a whole bunch of people who are
have their cameras on looking at you.
yeah. And then also all of my co-presenters were all like huge channels. I was talking to Taylor Benke, who was a presenter there too, and she said, "Yeah, I think I probably have the smallest channel here." And I said, "I doubt it." And she said, "Well," and I said, "Well, how many do you have?" And she said, "Only about 15,000." And I said, "I have 300." Like, I just crossed the 300 mark last week.
Yeah, and for those out there, when you go to an event like this, that isn't the kind of discussion that but most of people, like when you're talking to other people while you're there, numbers don't really come up.
No.
Everybody's just talking about creating and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But which is I think testament to like the kind of diversity of speakers that were up there, because obviously you have this personal experience and the story to tell to everybody that's out there that's pursuing what they want to do. Right. Dare I say it's a passion in progress.
I like the plug right there. That was good. Yeah. So it's not about the numbers. I was only saying that because I was up there with people who have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and it was just like, I always wanted to meet you. Sure, we're on the same team. So I actually I organized our team dinner because I was like, we should all meet each other. I mean, I just wanted to meet them. But it seemed like a good thing to do. And I just gave a 10-minute presentation about how I just recently had to overcome a specific fear, and then how I did that, and then tried to relate that to anybody else that has any kind of fear, which, as it turns out, is all of us.
Yeah.
And I think it went pretty well. Yeah.
I think what's interesting is that it wasn't, you were asking before it started, you were asking if people, like what people thought, if somebody stutters, what their biggest fear would be.
Right.
And I think everybody's conclusion was public speaking, but it wasn't that.
No.
Yeah.
It seems like stutterers would hate to do speaking. But actually, that's all stutterers want to do is speak.
Yeah.
What we hate is when we try to speak and we can't, and we just get silence. And so that was my idea about the presentation anyway.
Using silence, which I thought was really interesting. Going on from there, so you did a public speaking event.
Yep.
And then you came to Austin for the first time. And then can you talk through what the curriculum is for somebody that's going to the program, if somebody's interested in doing the McGuire program?
It's basically what you are paying for, what you are joining is for a lifetime membership. It's this lifetime support membership that starts with a 3-day course. It's a very intensive course that is a whole lot of hard work. But as I said, we kind of break down and wipe the whole slate clean about your speaking by starting to give you a whole new way of breathing even. And that's kind of how it starts, which it's amazing because you see people who on Wednesday night will have just a whole lot of repetitive kind of trouble, right? So if you have a block, it could be on my name, maybe, you know,
oh my gosh.
Or and we just don't know all the time even how to handle that, right? And so by starting with a whole new way of breathing even, you're basically starting over completely. And it's amazing because by noon on Thursday then, people are just not, it's not happening anymore. Now,
awesome. It's
not that they are speaking or that they are cured completely, you know, because there is no cure. But they start to be able to truly control their speech because of this new breathing technique, and then a number of other physical techniques that we teach on Thursday. And so then on Friday, then it's all about psychological things, how stuttering affects us psychologically, and then what kinds of techniques and weapons, as we call them, we can use to fight back on the psychological side against our stuttering also. And that's throughout this whole thing, there's a whole lot of exercising, of drilling of these techniques. But I think it's the psychological side of things that is so insidious about stuttering. Everybody else just sees a block, or like, oh, he's having some trouble speaking, right? But what hurts us is not that it's not that instance. It's how that instance makes you feel. I mean, feelings of guilt, of shame, of self-hate, you know, sense of isolation, just panic and fear because you want to speak, but you can't, or you're always changing all your words because it's like, I know I'm going to stutter on that word right there, so I'll change it to a synonym because I don't feel like I'll stutter on that word. And
wow.
And so that's constantly happening every time you speak. Like I have expanded my vocabulary because I stutter.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Like, were you literally, as you grew up, were you just like, let me find other ways to say other words?
Always, all the time.
Wow.
Every time I would speak for my whole life, it was like, it's weird because you can kind of feel it coming. And so as you feel that, then you just start to try to say, well, if I can't say,
now you're trying to think of a word that you just said. That's got to be hard in and of itself.
If you can't say like, I'm going to exercise because you are concerned about that E word, you could say, I'm going to work out, right? But you don't even know that until you get just a few words away from it. And so you're like, okay, I'll do workout instead of exercise. But even then, if you're able to get through that word, there are a couple really, really bad things about that. Number one, you aren't saying exactly what you want to say. And that's kind of a pain. Number two, though, because we're trying to just not stutter, we're kind of not being honest with people or with ourselves about the fact that we stutter. right? Because, well, and that over time, that really eats at you, and it just makes everything scary.
Yeah.
It makes every speaking engagement, or even just talking to a person or your parents or your spouse, like all of that, it just, you aren't ever really you. And so that's a key thing in the McGuire program that has truly changed my life. Like even outside of speaking, is this whole idea that to be authentic to who you are, to stop avoiding things, to own everything about yourself, to be a lot more self-actualized.
That's so much more beyond speaking.
Oh my gosh.
It's like
it's crazy. And I never knew this, right? I mean, I was just like, yeah, I stutter. And I mean, I've always been a fairly outgoing person, which was actually, it was kind of hard being a very outgoing person who stutters, but I was like, this is kind of who I am. But yeah, I mean, I didn't understand all these psychological things about myself, which is just so interesting because I've been able to now apply these things to many, many other areas of my life. That, I mean, I say that we are in the life-changing business, and we just kind of apply it to stuttering. But all these things, especially on the psychological side, are so applicable to many, many other things. And it's just really, really cool.
Yeah. Can you talk about what you did yesterday?
Yes. After 3 days of this intensive, like 14, 15 hours a day of unlearning all your old stuff and then relearning all of these new things, in addition to even how we think about speaking, we have all of the new students then over the span of about 2.5 or 3 hours, they go out and they meet, or they introduce themselves to 100 random
so cool
strangers on the street, which on Wednesday night would be just like, I'm not doing that, right? But then 72 hours later, they are excited about doing this. And as they do that, they aren't just trying to speak normally. They are speaking with a more exaggerated technique, kind of like I'm doing right now,
just to get the right tools.
Because that is it's kind of the foundation of the process, of the technique, and you're able to then come back to that if you need to, and even to continue to use those techniques even if you don't need to, because again, that's all about showing people who you authentically are. So in that presentation on Monday, even as we're talking right now, I've been using some of these weapons, of these techniques, and I haven't had to necessarily, but I'm doing it to keep myself honest, to continue to communicate to you by showing you that I am a person who stutters, but I can speak very, very eloquently, I hope. And it just doesn't matter, right? That's a huge thing about this, is that you start to understand that it just doesn't matter. And people never really cared about your stutter as much as you thought they did, which when you get on the other side of it and you look back, it's like, of course they didn't. Everybody's got all kinds of things going on. Right? They don't like their boss. They have a bad back, right? You know, like how I speak is not very high on most people's lists of things to be concerned about. But to us, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, it's like everything. This is all that they think about after we stop talking is, that guy can't talk. Yeah, and of course not. That's just not how it is. So
typical reaction of those 100 people. Typical reaction of a random person.
That is so cool. That is awesome. I'm amazed that you are doing this and you sound fantastic.
Isn't that cool? Especially, I assume for the other person that is talking to everyone, probably a big booster as they go along in the process too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's completely eye-opening because, as I just said, right, we think that everybody just walks around town after they talk with the person who stutters and they're like, gosh, that's all I'm going to think about for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like negative, negative, negative. And then you actually show people that you do stutter by using some of these more exaggerated techniques to be your honest, true self. And you see that their reactions are like, yeah, that's fine. I think that's awesome that you are putting yourself out there like that. And all that stuff helps you to control your speech and to speak more eloquently anyway. Completely turn the tables on this thing that has kind of ruled you for your whole life. And you can start to actually do that in this short period of a long weekend.
Yeah.
You can start to.
It
takes a lot of work afterwards. But that's where this program is so effective because we provide all of the ongoing support that's included because you've already paid for it for life. Other kinds of programs I've tried, and I've tried a few, you spend a whole lot of money and you probably are helped a whole lot in the clinic. But then as you go home, it becomes harder, obviously, and there isn't that follow-up support. Or if there is, it's very expensive because all of our coaches and instructors are people who stutter also, but are making massive improvements in their ability to speak eloquently. It helps them to help others. And so it becomes this huge worldwide community of, as I said earlier, stutterers helping stutterers. It really, really is. And it's just this amazingly positive, inspiring. I mean, our WhatsApp group is just always popping off with like, bring, bring. It's like, I did this today. I'm having some trouble over here. And then there's just a like, well, here's what you can do. It's okay. I had that happen too. And then it's like, I just had this huge win. And it's like, oh, that's awesome, man. I mean,
do you have a specific story? And like, you don't have to give out names or anything, but just like give how long you've been instructing for the McGuire program. And in that time period, is there somebody that you met that's just like gone from 0 to 100 and they're like just crushing it, that kind of thing?
We have people who came in who could like hardly say their names or speak and are now, after a couple years, like lawyers now. And
how about that? That's crazy.
I know. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, a guy who came in at the start of law school and he was having a real hard time. He was able to start to overcome his stuttering, and truly now he's been in the program about 2.5 years. He just graduated from law school. He has exactly the job as an attorney that he was hoping to have, and he's just absolutely killing it. I mean, it's amazing to hear how he speaks. And he doesn't speak, I mean, he can speak as we are speaking right now, but he often does use that technique that I was telling you about, that I've been using throughout this interview as well, just to keep himself honest and to help continue to show people that he's a person who is working very, very hard to overcome his stuttering. And it's not the kind of thing that you ever stop doing.
Yep.
It's not like if I just do this for 5 years, then I won't ever have to do it again. I will always be a person who stutters, but I am completely okay with that. I never was okay with that. I am okay with that now because I can control it, and because it gives me the opportunity to help other people. And it's a constant challenge that I get to just continue to work on. And it's who I am.
I think it's so powerful that in and of itself, you being authentic to who you are, you're just like, you accept who you are. And that actually helps you progress, not only as a person, but also with your speech.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah,
it's such a crazy thing that you can be like, how authentic you are to yourself is analogous to how much you can, I like how you put it, choose happy and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that is the whole thing is, and it's not just for people who stutter. I mean, everybody tries to be somebody who they're not in some way. I mean, there isn't ever anybody who is completely 100% self-actualized. That would be, I don't know, maybe there is, but, but the more that you can be, and the more that you can put out there any of the issues, of the concerns, of the fears that you have about yourself, you find that it inspires other people to just be happy themselves. I can't tell you how many times, even after that speech, I had people coming up to me afterwards and saying, "Thank you so much. I've got this fear of such and such, or I have a project that I've been putting off because I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to start on it now." And it's like, that's cool. Just be who you are. Try to help others, choose happy.
There you go.
That's it,
Talk about how it is being a YouTube creator and also with the stutter though, because not only are you interacting with people, but then how do you choose to edit your footage and everything, like when you're making videos and everything?
Yeah, so that's interesting because I try to keep in the either disfluencies or how I handle those disfluencies.
Disfluency, what a great term.
Yeah. Well, and as I'm doing things like what I just did right there on that L word, I didn't have to do that, but as I said, I do it to keep myself honest and to show you that I'm a person working very hard to overcome my stuttering. In a fast-moving, like highly edited YouTube video, that's not always, it can screw up the whole timing of things, right? But I try to keep those things in as much as I can because I feel like if I don't, then I'm not being me. So it is interesting. I keep it in a lot, but sometimes just because of the beat of the music of the edit, but you always say to take out a whole lot of ums, right? I mean, because if you're trying to keep a very fickle viewer's attention, you don't want to be so like. And I'll be honest, I used to be a huge ummer. Oh my gosh, I was just.
I don't think I've heard you say it yet.
I don't think you have.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't say that anymore. That's another cool thing is that our goal in this program is not to speak fluently because we're people who stutter. So we won't speak fluently. Our goal is to speak eloquently.
Oh, what a soundbite that is.
And how we do that is we take time, we pause, we take a breath, we speak, we release that residual air, which gives us time to formulate again and allows us to speak in chunks that people can actually absorb. And that's very much, it's a very eloquent way of speaking because you are measured and you give your listener time to hear what you've said and to process it. And those pauses are so powerful.
Yeah.
Really are. I'm still working to pause more. I'll be completely honest about that. When I speak my best, kind of like, I think I did a pretty good job Monday.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm pausing a lot. And it just, it creates that tension almost where people have to hang on your words, but it also allows them to really process what you've said. And that's very different from the way that the majority of non-stutterers in the world speak. It's usually just blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
With a whole lot of likes, like, yeah, Yeah,
feeling
like,
the
you know,
silence.
right? Yeah, people fear silence. I mean, that's what I had done
Mm-hmm.
in the presentation. But if you become comfortable with that, that's so powerful because so many people are not comfortable with that silence.
There's two things from there, and I actually got into this with Cody Warner podcast that I just did with him. He brought up a concept of all right and so, and just removing those from your vocabulary in order to just be more efficient at creating videos. And that, not only that, but in this circumstance, also with conversations. There's another podcaster that I follow. I believe he goes by the name Bandrew, and he has a podcast that's pretty good, YouTube page called The Podcast Age, and it's just like a whole bunch of behind the scenes, like use this microphone, use all this kind of stuff. Okay. But with that, he talked about his ahs, and how he practices. He just gets on a microphone and just starts talking like for 15 minutes a day, because he takes the concept of like, you want to be a professional podcaster, why aren't you practicing your craft when you're not podcasting? Right. Like if you're just talking when you're on microphone, that's the only time that you're doing it. Yeah. With that, he talks about the use of silence. And when you want to say, in my circumstance, all right, so, or instead of, if you come to I guess like a block of what you want to say, or you didn't know what you wanted to say, instead of filling it with like what I just did, or whatever, just have it be silence and recalibrate, and then get to the thing that you need to say.
Yep. And that's really, really hard for stutters in general, because any time that I've been speaking in my life and I've encountered silence, it's been a bad thing usually. So my clock in my head as to how long a silence is, how long a pause is completely out of whack, to where the tiniest pause, I think, is like, oh, right? So I'm still trying to recalibrate that. And what's really cool about it, though, is that, as you said, if you are okay with that pause, it just makes you a more powerful speaker. It really, really does.
Yeah. And with a smile. But for those that are just listening, Brian's had a smile on his face this whole time.
Well, I'm speaking. I love speaking. You know, I mean, this is what I get to do now. So it's fun.
The concept of you teaching it, how much has that helped you with your own stutter?
Oh man, it's incredible. I mean, when you have responsibility for even just one other person, as we would have with our coaches, but then as an instructor who's in charge of the class for 3 days, and it's just this huge responsibility that is just so much fun, though, because you get to put your personality out there, and you get to try and help people, and everybody's different, so everybody is an individual, and in that, then it's like a puzzle. Everybody's but you have 20 of them in the class, and you get to try to see how you can help them individually, but then also as a whole class. And it's just a whole lot of fun. I think you were asking earlier if I've ever had to step back. And yes, that's a huge part of it. So we had these 3 new students, and I told them yesterday, I said several times, actually, you are going to head home and you'll feel amazing right now, because you've been working really hard, and you've started to have a whole lot of confidence, which you've earned. Over time, you will probably fall back to what we call the swamp, to having a whole lot of turbulence, and that's okay. That happens. You have to expect that, because we have this lifetime membership, then you it's not like you're stuck in the swamp. You just keep reaching out for help, right? You know, we give everybody at least one coach as they leave their first class, and they call that coach every single day for several weeks.
How about that? That's crazy.
Yeah. And then every other day for several weeks after that. And then we have this worldwide network of a couple hundred coaches who everybody has their contact information, and people will call them, Skype them, WhatsApp them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great because it helps them too, because they're also people who stutter. And exactly as you said, by helping other people, you really, really help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You understand the technique a lot better. We also have a whole lot of staff training to train people to become coaches, train people to become instructors in the program, but then also just in general, how to help people, and so it is just this thing that you couldn't stop it right now if you tried, because it's just all these people helping each other. And it's just really, really cool. But yes, you always have to be aware that you could take a couple steps backwards, and that's okay. That's life too, right? I mean, you have hard things in life that can affect other things. So yeah, as in about October-ish of this past year, I started to see that my control of my speech wasn't quite as high as I felt it should be to be in charge of this program. And so
would you say were you on a spurt of, like, for me being a video editor, I'd just be like indoors all day, like doing video editing. Was it because you weren't like out and about talking to people all the time, or?
No, I just, if I'm being honest, I had kind of, I don't want to say I had gotten lazy, because that's not the case, but I didn't always address, an issue as it happened, and that
it compounds over time.
Yeah.
See, now I'm doing it. I'm like finishing your sentences for you.
Oh no.
But I'm like, it's so interesting, like being in a conversation, but then also thinking about the concepts of the conversation at the same time,
right,
in a podcast. But then also thinking about
conversations,
and then thinking about, oh, what questions do I have about this? It's it's like such an inception of a conversation.
I was just gonna say it's very, very meta.
But what do you? So you were in a rut. What did you do?
So I had to admit that to myself at first, which was honestly kind of hard. It was hard to admit and say, yeah, I'm not exactly where I need to be, and it shouldn't have been hard, because I'm a person who stutters. It's okay that I was having some issue, but as I said, nobody is perfectly self-actualized, and that was a mistake I made. So, but as soon as I did, as soon as I admitted it to myself and then started telling other people about it in the program, I could start to actually do something about it. And so I did. I set a goal in the month of November to talk to 1,500 people.
So many people.
It's a lot of people who I wouldn't otherwise have to have spoken to, except to help myself here on this challenge. And so in doing that, I was like, man, how am I gonna, that's a lot of people. I don't even know if I can do this. So I just had to break it down, right? And because I'm extremely good at math, I could figure out that 1,500 divided by 30 was 50. So on my first day, on November 1st, I had to take a step, but I figured it should be an easy step, because that's a good way to get started, to build momentum. And so I called 50 Starbuckses in Los Angeles. And I just asked them very basic questions. What time do you open? Where are you located? Do you have any blueberry scones? Because I like them.
What was the ratio of blueberry scones to non-blueberry scones?
It was, I'm very, I was very impressed. Just about every Starbucks in Los Angeles on November 1st, 2018 had blueberry scones.
There you
so
go.
That's
people are going to know that now.
That's right. Big ups, Starbucks. You passed the Brian Sellers blueberry scone test. So
Boom.
outstanding. But yeah, so I started, and then it felt so good to be started because like 3 days earlier, I was like, I don't know if I need to do anything. Maybe I don't really. And it's like, just stop. Just get started.
I feel like so many people can relate to that.
Admit to yourself that you aren't everything, that you aren't awesomely amazing all the time, and just do something about it. And so I took a small step, and then immediately on that day at the end of November 1st, I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing something about this. And I just felt incredible because I'd gone from hiding to actually acting to on the path to overcoming this thing. It felt really good. Felt really, really good. So then
end of the month, how was it?
End of the month was amazing. I at about 10 o'clock on November 30th, I hung up the phone on my 1,505th person who I spoke to, both on the phone, in person, groups of people, and yeah, I felt amazing. I had accomplished that goal, which in and of itself was great. I had certainly helped my speech and my control, but even more than that, I changed my perceptions and beliefs about myself, that I believed again that I could conquer just about anything. And that was just an amazing feeling.
Boom.
Boom.
This is really particular, but how did you keep track number-wise?
We have, I don't have any with me here, but we have clicker counters.
That's because I was like, when you're doing something like that, it's like, oh sure, you can keep up with, like, I know I'm going to call 50 people a day, but you lose track. Like if you're not physically doing little hash marks or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I still have to do my vlog of that, and I have some nice B-roll of the thing just like slowly rolling. So yeah, but that's how we do it. We it's funny, as we're doing it out in public, we try to keep it in our pockets, because otherwise it's like, excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the coffee shop? Or excuse me, can you please tell me how to get to the coffee shop? And they're like, yeah, no, it's just down there. And it's like, yeah, 84.
Awesome.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap up what we do, I always ask 2 questions to the guests. First one is, why do you do what you do?
I do what I do mainly because I love helping people. And I think that I have a unique opportunity to take my experiences helping myself and helping others with a very specific thing, helping us all to be on our journeys to overcoming stuttering. And I think that I have a unique opportunity to push that out to people who don't stutter. And I am just excited to be able to have any kind of impact on as many people as I can. That's what I want to do with my life.
It's so interesting because you're already in the act of doing it. Like, one with the speech at 368, and then also you have a YouTube channel. Like, you just do it on a day-to-day basis anyway, and put it out there for anybody that wants to see.
Yeah.
By the way, you can check out Brian Sellers on YouTube at Brian Sellers.
At Brian Sellers.
Last question is from, let's say, before you started doing the McGuire program, and you said you already went through a couple different programs and things of that nature. What I like to phrase the question is, if it's in a career-wise, like, how does somebody get from point A to point B? But in your case, to get to where you're at today from before you did the McGuire program, what's some advice to somebody that, say, may have a stutter, or I guess like in my situation, I know somebody who does stutter. Like, what's some advice for people that are just like interacting with people that stutter? Yeah,
well, so for people who are just, if you happen to meet or know a person who stutters, just give them time. I mean, that's I think most people generally do, But yeah, I mean, just it varies from person to person, but especially if you have kids who are starting or who you think are starting to stutter. I mean, again, I'm not a speech pathologist, but I think that if you don't make a big deal out of it, I think that's good advice for everybody. If the person is a child, if the person is an adult, just hear what the person has to say, not so much exactly how they say it necessarily.
That's awesome. And then for to get to where you're at today from before, what would you say? Just like
enroll in the McGuire program.
Enroll in the McGuire program.
Yeah. No, I can't really give advice to people who stutter to come and follow my path without coming through this program, because my path and my success and my journey is so inextricably tied to the McGuire program.
There you go.
Because that's exactly what's helped me. But I would say to everybody out there, any stutterer out there, I just want you to be happy. If that's through our program, if that's through any other program, if that isn't through any program at all, I mean, just understand that you are okay, right? You have a lot to offer, even if you stutter uncontrollably for the rest of your life. You have a lot to offer as a person, as a human being, and I mean, stuttering is hard, it's tough, but it's not the end of the world. You can offer a lot of things to a lot of people. And if you do want to overcome your stuttering, I'd be happy to help.
Speaking of, where can people find you?
You can find us online on our website is www.McGuireProgramme.com, and that's McGuireProgramme.com. So it's the
so it's an okay.
It's the English spelling
of program. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I'm assuming though, if they Googled McGuire Program, you guys
would find us for sure. Yeah. Yep.
And then for the events of the McGuire Program here in these states, or obviously it's overseas too. How often does it happen? Whereabouts does it happen?
Yeah.
If somebody wants to get involved, how does that look?
Sure. So we have 6 more events or opportunities to join the program in 2019, and they'll be across the country. We are going to have a course in Washington, D.C. in March. Then we'll be in Seattle in April. We'll be in New York City in June. We'll be in Chicago in August, Toronto in October, and Vegas in November.
I don't even think I would have remembered that, but yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then all that's on the website. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, call me, Twitter me, YouTube me, I mean, whatever.
On Instagram and Twitter, you're at Brian Sellers, right?
On Twitter, I'm at Brian R. Sellers, but on Instagram, I'm at Brian Sellers. And then on YouTube, at Brian Sellers. That's BrianSellers.
Awesome. Well, I think you did such a justification of like the McGuire program just throughout this whole conversation talking about the program in general. And then I love how you put it that you couldn't get to where you're at right now because of who you are is so tied into what that program has given you.
Yeah. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk about it. I love this program because of how it's helped me, because of how I've seen it help just hundreds of other people. It can be life-changing. It takes a whole lot of hard work, but you can do it. And I see it all the time. So, especially because all that support is just included. Hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. You couldn't possibly use all the support that is available to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's been a whole lot of fun. This is my first podcast ever, so I appreciate that's right. It was all kinds of fun. I want to do another one.
There you go. If you would like to reach out to me, I'm at Javier Mercedes X on all the social things. That's Javier Mercedes X. Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes. All those reviews help me out in the iTunes algorithm and spreads this podcast out to everybody in the iTunes atmosphere. Till next time, live a life of abundance, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.